Hey everybody, it's me, DIGI. Welcome back to the stream. Today is Sunday, December 1st, 2024. Welcome to December, and welcome to the first of what some streamers might call the days of Christmas, or Vlogmas, or whatever you want to call it. I might even make this the first unofficial day of Devmas, and I don't know if I'd be able to pull it off for 25 straight days in a row because, again, I'm going to be taking a bit of a break as we come into and through this month. But I did want to stream a little bit before I kick off a kind of like break period and then come back later. I am continuing my dev journey as I revisit 2024 scenery dev in Higginsville Industrial Municipal Airport, learning new things, actually putting custom assets in for the buildings, and trying to create some base buildings that will eventually become the buildings which will be detailed and have the same level of detail that the default ones do, but they'll just look more customized. I am continuing the journey today by finishing up the final two buildings that we've put in there with some base textures, and then maybe trying to see if I can make them even more detailed, and either creating another more detailed grouping that I could switch off for, I don't know, automated levels of detail, or continuing to do more development of the airport grounds themselves, aprons, taxiways, lights, that kind of a thing. It's a very small airport at KHIG, so there's probably not going to be a significant amount of detail in every single sign, but I might actually create some more assets in Blender so that I can actually make the airport look a little bit nicer. Okay, getting a little choppy, so that means we finished loading in. Let's go ahead and jump into the sim. But before we get started, folks, just in case anybody's curious, and I'll make a mention of this when we wrap up the stream tonight, I am trying to get funding to continue the scenery dev journey and to take care of some pesky bills. So, if you're interested in supporting me in other channels, I can give you the link to my Ko-fi.com account, which I'll put in chat temporarily. Yes, I need another window. Hold on. And if I don't have that window open, we'll figure out how to do it. Otherwise, stand by. Here we go. Okay, so I don't have that one open just yet. I should be able to solve the problem really fast by keeping the window open here. But I do have a couple of other revenue streams that I'm trying to use to generate revenue and to fund some future projects, ideas, the like. And I appreciate anyone's support that's willing to come along with me on the journey. It's not required, but it's certainly appreciated. Now, people that do support me, eventually I do want to create platforms and ways that you guys can get returns on your investment, because I know it's great to help friends along, but it's also nice to be able to get a thing or two in return. So, the journey of a bunch of funded airports begins with a simple donation request. So if you're curious, you can check me out on kofi.com/digidriver, and you can also check me out on buymeacoffee.com/digi123. Again, not required for me to keep cranking out sceneries at the moment, but eventually at some point I would like to make it a bit of the, not necessarily cornerstone, but definitely part of the foundation for me growing as a scenery developer. But welcome aboard. Let's go ahead and jump into the sim and go back to Kilo Hotel India Golf, which is Higginsville Industrial. And no, I have not forgotten about Lafayette Regional. I'm just trying to capitalize on developing for FS2024. This will be my first completed project for the new sim, and honestly, it's kind of cool to be able to jump into this thing and get started on the process. But learning does take a bit. It takes a little while. Sometimes it takes a very long while. So I'm trying to figure out what's necessary in order to actually create the finished product, which would in this case, be a freeware release either on FlightSim.co or any number of one or more freeware dev sites. FlightSim.co probably being the most significant, or rather most visible one at the moment. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's go ahead and open the project up, and then we're going to go ahead and load the airport and get back to deving. So let me just make sure I have the window open. That helps me see who's in chat. I apologize for not being more prepared, and we should be able to get underway shortly. Okay, great. Now, I do apologize in advance. I do try to pay attention to chat, but sometimes when I'm on a good rip in scenery dev, what happens is I sometimes ignore chat. But we'll try to fix that by being cognizant of conversations and addressing questions as they come. So we're back in Kilo Hotel India Golf, and as you can tell, I've built some custom buildings. I have learned from some folks that have offered advice or continuing suggestions for the assets that are in the sim. I'm not sure if these are flashing because the buildings are there already or because I've created some assets with things that are basically sitting on top of each other. I'll have to take a look at the downloadable content when I put it in my community folder, but I do have custom buildings that will represent the, I guess, not the fixed base operator, but essentially the building for the airport and one of multiple hangar buildings. This, I believe, is called Higginsville Avionics. I might try to model some office rooms in there. And we do have what are probably either transient hangars or maybe hangars that's double duty as repair shops for small airplanes. And I've used the Cessna 172 wingspan as a bit of a guide to help me determine how wide those hangar doors should be. I started working on these two buildings, which will be the final two buildings for the custom scenery, and then maybe a few other things, some fencing, some signs, and then we'll figure out how everything else is going to work. In the meantime, let me go ahead and also fire up Blender because I'm going to need that to continue working on the assets. And I'm using Blender version 3.6 for development today. I tried using Blender 4.2, but the last time I tried loading it, it did not have a version of the Asobo, excuse me, Asobo exporter for Microsoft Flight Sim 2024. That might have changed in recent weeks, so I might have to keep my eyes peeled to figure out what's up. However, let me go ahead and pay attention to what I'm doing here. Let me move this out of the way because I want to see. I'm not sure if this building has no conceivable kind of like, typical hangar roof setup. I do know there's another service building attached to that hangar, which is going to serve as, I guess, an area where the trucks are going to be. So let's do this. I know I have to do something. I'm going to have to figure out which way I'm facing and then determine whether or not this is actually correct. But, small problem. I have not loaded Blender into my stream window yet. Let me go ahead and do that now and we'll get underway. The only problem might be that the Blender window that appears might not be the same one. So I'm going to have to tweak it and then get it to pop up. Oh, wait a minute. I do see a Blender window. It needs to come in over FS2024. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to shrink the FS2024 window, shrink the FS2024 window temporarily so that you guys can also see the Blender window as well. This should give you guys just enough of a visual kickback so you can see what's going on in the sim while also seeing what's going on in Blender at the same time. Welcome aboard and good evening, everybody. I am working on the final two hangars and buildings in Higginsville Industrial Municipal, and I'm going to go ahead and select some faces and see what I can do to make this look better or work better. Because this is an atypical building, I might not actually, on this side, I definitely won't put up the dividers in the place that I think I can. I have to move the plane over just to get an idea, but I'm done with that part anyway for now. I'm using the Cessna 172 as a kind of a measuring stick to figure out where the planes are going to go in. And it's a little bit tricky because I took away the ground aprons, so they're going to be a little bit tricky to figure out. But I think there are going to be only two hangars, or maybe only one. And then essentially, there's going to be a separate room for service traffic for trucks. So let's do this. Let me take one piece away for now, and I'm going to. Oh wait, this is building 6, but it's called building 5. No, 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 no. Okay, this needs to be called building 6. Don't mind me. In Blender, the new way of actually creating objects requires that you pay attention to the naming of the objects that you use, because this is a lot more tied into the exporter, which means that you're going to need to kind of pay attention. I do need to still do something with the building to differentiate it, and now I think I should be okay. When I export, I should be able to export to the same folder I was exporting to before. I don't think I have a revision 1 for this yet. Let me change that, and that should take care of me. Now I can export the object. I can go into my hard drive folder where my scenery objects are and copy them into the sim. And we're going to be hot reloading these objects repeatedly. And fortunately, the sim is way more forgiving about that than FS2020 was. In FS2020, if you created a new object and you posted it into the sim with new textures and stuff, usually what had to happen was you had to basically exit the sim, come back in, and then work with the objects you imported. Either that or I was doing it wrong. But it took me a little bit to actually get this kind of stuff done and imported, and now that I have a slightly better approach to this, to the sim, it's easier for me to do my work. Let's see. How did it get exported, and did it actually work? Oh, good. It actually worked. I was expecting my CPU fan to spin up a little bit more to tell me, but it looks like we're okay right now. This is good. This is good. I think I'm going to adjust the side of this, and I'm going to bring this particular portion in, which should have an impact, should have a visible impact when you see it in the sim. So we're going to go 2, 3, 4. We're going to move it closer, and then we're going to export, copy the files over. And again, this is a definite advantage over FS2020 scenery development. The feedback loop between Blender and the sim is a lot smaller. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm not working on a huge airport like, say, Doha or JFK or something like that. So I don't have to reload a whole bunch of assets in the sim at once. So let's go ahead and move them 3 over. This should probably be a lot closer to getting this rendered. And I use a multi-export tool, which I've gotten specifically for FS2024 development and exporting, and I can go into it in detail in a future stream. And I am seriously considering having some kind of a a development clinic, like I've talked about in the past, I need to figure out what it is that I want to do with that, but I think there's a very real possibility for it. All right, I'm going to make this one a little bit wider, and then we're going to keep to the rule of, like, say 6 squares or so for the portion of wall between this corner and out here. Just enough room for the airplane to get by a little bit more. I'm also going to slide this piece over so that this opening is 12 units wide, like usual. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I have those squares as a guide. And so far, they've been at least somewhat reliable. So let's go ahead, select the object again, hit export. And again, this is it's kind of what I call a rapid fire approach. It's a much faster way for me to actually get these things rendered, as opposed to you know, thinking about the design a lot inside the sim. Actually, I think this is going to have to be a little bit wider still. And I don't know why, because the plane hasn't really changed. I think it's just because my placement is off. Let me double check. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Normally 12 squares should be all I need to actually get it done. However, the problem isn't necessarily the number of squares, but where they're placed. So we're going to keep to the pattern. We're going to move this over 1 square. Yeah, we're going to move it over 1 square. We're going to change this up so it occupies 1 square. And so we haven't really changed the dimensions of the openings for the airplanes. All we've done is kind of move the posts a little bit. And by doing that, we should be able to get this to behave. But in case you happen to find this channel, or you've wandered in, or for some reason you're watching my VOD and you're wondering what's going on and who I am a scenery developer. I've made freeware sceneries for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and I am working on my very first scenery for FS2024, which is my very first scenery from the prior sim. This is Higginsville Industrial Municipal Airport, Kilo Hotel India Golf. It's a small airport outside the town of Higginsville in the state of Missouri in the US. So now that we have the opening for this plane, I'm going to slide the plane over some, and we're going to see if we can actually make another opening here. In theory, we should be able to, and I already have a good bunch of clearance here. All I have to do is finish the setup in Blender. So like before, 3, 6, 9, 12. That should be a wide enough opening to get the plane through. We hit export, reload, the files update, and I can actually dump them in. This is work for these buildings to get them to the lowest common denominator of detail. There's going to be more that we're going to do to actually fix these buildings up. But for now, all I'm focused on is just making sure these buildings actually have what they need to have. And in this specific instance, it's almost like these are precisely where they should be, unless, of course, I missed something. Let's go ahead and pull this airplane through. So yeah, about 12 squares is enough to get this thing in the door. So essentially, I think we're okay here. But I also think the placement of these beams is incorrect. So I need to fix that on this side. Fortunately, since I don't have a lot of materials, actually I don't have any materials outside the base material for this object, it shouldn't take me very long to actually get this set up. And this is straight enough for me to actually do the work. This side is going to be a little bit trickier because it's very much narrower than I expected it to be. So I'm going to select the object, drag this all the way over. We'll start with roughly 1 unit of separation, and then we'll do the usual separation of 12 units from one side to another. And that should be enough to get started. If you're wondering what software I'm using to do this, I'm using the SDK inside of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, which you have to download and install, but you can use it inside the sim when you load into any airport. And I'm also using Blender version 3.6. Okay, so I should be able to copy these files. It should override what I had before. When you create a project, when you get to the point where you create your model library, you copy your updated files into that library. And I can probably go into detail about that in the future when we start with an incredibly simple, incredibly basic airport that we'd probably be using for modeling. And this still looks like it's a little too close to the airplane's wings, so I'm going to go ahead and clip this to about half width, or even less. And then essentially, with that change, that should make the plane fit. No idea why it's set up that way, but at the same time, I kind of don't care. Okay, that's a little bit... Let me see. Yeah, that's an actual line. Okay, so it's taxi line, which we can probably work on, but this is good enough. This is definitely good enough to get this plane in the door. And we're going to do a very similar thing on this side. If we take a look at where the taxi line is, then I'm probably going to want a little bit more clearance. So this is going to be really weird. I don't know if I want to make these poles, or not poles, but basically separators half width. I might just for this building. And then what that means is wherever the rest of the divider goes, it'll be fine. Let's move this over to a width of 12 like we usually do. Drop it in, export the files, copy them, and there's plenty that, again, I can probably put into practice, but at the same time, we got to work with what we're working with. I think this is where we kind of figure out what's next. I'm going to merge these two parts. At least I think I am. All right, sorry about that. Just checking in real quick with Mrs. DIGI. I want to make sure that she's taken care of. I am working on trying to tie these two polygons together, and I'm not sure if it's easier to get rid of the edges and then merge these two sides together. It probably is. So let me delete this edge if it's possible, and then delete this edge if it's possible. And then essentially what I'd be able to do is to bridge them. And there we go. We've got a complete wall here. Unless, of course, I bork this up, which it kind of looks like I did. There's something about this that I neglected to pay attention to, which is going to make me bridge these two lines instead of getting cute with the rest of it. Actually, hold on. Oh, really? All right. I'm not gonna stress out about this too much right now. And I'm not sure why I can't. Oh, I know why. I know why. because I created the side and then merged it back in later, and there's no incredibly okay. I'm trying to figure out how to say this in my head. When I select sides and turn them into their own objects and merge them back into the project, the vertices that were created weren't tied to the original objects. That's not necessarily a problem right now, but that might be a problem for future development if I need to do something specific. I might have to kind of disassemble the object and then do what's necessary. But I'm not terribly concerned about that right now. Let me figure out what the next step's going to be, but hold on. Okay, so this is the part of the building which is going to get pushed back. And I need to figure out how this is going to work. In theory, I should be able to pull this back, except the problem is it's not going to work that easily. What I need to do is to grab all these edges and then pull them back. Including you. Okay, that actually worked. I'm very fortunate that there wasn't anything more complex than that. So it's going to have to come back a certain amount of space, but basically what I can do is just start experimenting. And if you're like me and you get stuck on figuring out precisely how far to move things, best piece of advice I can give you is sometimes the only answer is just to move them and see what happens when you actually move something and stick it back in the sim. So, in one sense, that's one part of the building. And then what we could possibly do is extrude another part of the building, which is actually going to stick up above it. And this is actually pretty close to good, so I'm not going to stress out. I'm not going to stress out about, whether or not that's an inch off. That's pretty good. I'll save this as a new revision of this object, and then we will get working on the next piece. Okay, so I've been in a different, like a non-material mode of this, which is fine because we're not focused on material textures just yet. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I think I need to extrude this a certain amount of space anyway. The only problem with extrusion is that for some reason it doesn't want to extrude in a very nice way. And it's probably because I'm going to need to keep the building about as wide as it was and then break that piece off. Yeah. Or what I could do is just create another cube and then basically just keep it that way. Let me take a look at satellite imagery and see what this looks like so that I can actually do something. Sorry, I'm just going to go ahead and open this in my other browser. All right. If I take a look at the satellite imagery, it should tell me what these building tops look like. And it does look like it's actually a higher version of this. So extruding another piece actually is not that bad. The problem is, again, it just looks really crazy. So we're not going to do that. We're actually going to bring it back to where it was before. And that should probably give me a very similar placement, which we will then split. How am I going to do this? Okay, hang on. Export. copy, and then we're going to stick it back in the scenery like it was before, which should get the sim to redraw the object. Okay, I think we need like another 2 feet or something. And this is much easier than extruding because I can do it on one axis and I don't have to worry about something getting out of alignment exponentially or even slightly. I mean, I'm theoretically working with the lowest level of detail possible. I want to potentially detail these objects up even more, but it's going to be it's going to be what am I trying to say? It's going to be different. I don't know. Let me take a look at the sat nav. It looks like these buildings are either grayish or white roofs with some kind of color on the siding, which I can't tell. It's either like a dark color, dark brown, dark green, dark something, but it's not bright. So, okay. This could be good enough for me to figure out what to do next. What we're going to do next is split this along the side. Oh, well, this is going to be a slight problem, isn't it? Okay. This is going to be problematic. Impossible? No. Problematic? Yes. But if I focus on what's required, I'm not going to have to worry too much about what isn't there. Let's take these top portions and extrude them. Technically, it doesn't really matter how high or how low this goes because I can make an assumption about how high this is actually going to be. I'm not sure whether or not there are multiple floors on this, but it's not going to be it's not going to make these things too tall. If I set this up as a height of maybe 30 feet, that's about 10 feet higher than this. That I think is about 20 feet, but let's go ahead and take a look at that number in a converter online. Give me meters to feet, please. And we're going to take 6.096 meters and say that's 20 feet. Okay, so this top is about 10 feet above this. Whether or not there's a reason for that, I don't know. But if I make this 25 feet instead, then that's not that much. And if I take a look at satellite imagery, that will tell me whether or not that's important. The shadowing in this shot doesn't give me a good idea of perspective. I'm just going to go ahead and assume it's just like 5 feet taller. And that's just how it's going to be. And if somebody that lives in the Higginsville, Missouri area wants to make that an even more accurate one, I'd be glad to work with you just to get a better perspective on what this building is or what it does, etc. Okay. And like I've done before, we're going to go ahead and take this and match it up. I am trying to create a line which is going to give me some perspective on where this door should be or what it should do. And I'm essentially creating, I don't know if this door slides open or folds open or just kind of flips open. I'm assuming it kind of like slides back as it goes up, but again, this is it's kind of inconsequential right now. I just want to make sure that this is actually good and set. And I can probably create a wall of some kind in here, but again, version, like the lowest detailed version is probably not going to have an interior of any kind, so that's not something I'm concerned about. I will save a new revision version now, and we'll keep going. We're going to grab these faces and we're going to turn them into a separate side. All right. And we can choose those faces, and now we can start splitting them up. And in theory, I can take this by hand and do the same thing here. The only difference is they might not be exact, but at the same time, I don't know if that matters. So let's assume that we do it that way. What that means is we've got basically almost the exact same separation, but the problem is now I've got a whole bunch of lines that I have to dissolve. I wonder if there would have been a better way for me to do this without actually having to choose them all, if you know what I mean. And if you think about it, the same kind of effects could have been achieved by me just manually approximating how wide this door was. And again, I don't think this section of that building is going to accommodate any aircraft. I think this is just a condensed spot for service vehicles or things like that to exist. So there we go. We've got the doors, we've got the 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 entrance here, and I think that should be good enough for anything else that needs to be there. I don't know if this needs to be any higher, to be honest with you. Tabletop Android, hello. Welcome aboard, my friend. Happy to have you aboard. Folks, if you're looking for somebody that's interested in scenery dev and does plenty of flying in Microsoft Flight Simulator, please give my friend Tabletop Android a look-see. Feel free to click on their profile and click follow. They've put out content before. Great to have you aboard, my friend. Welcome. So let me actually boost this up a bit. What level is this at? Can I put this at 18 feet? Oh, well, I think that's already there. Let's see. What about 20 feet? Nope. Okay, that could be a problem if I don't do this the right way. I think I'm going to have to merge this back into the building as a whole. Oh, you got it, my friend. Welcome. Happy to have you. I am going to be doing this for just a little bit longer tonight. I was doing some stuff on my computer. I'm trying to figure out some things. I mean, if you follow me on my Discord at all, then you know that I've been trying to do things to start pursuing a potential business opportunity with regards to scenery development, and I've got some potential inroads inbound. But right now, there's still, so much speculation, but at the same time, good speculation. I'm waiting to see if anything comes to fruition, and I'm kind of keeping things on the QT, but suffice it to say, if everything works out, then I've got some opportunities coming into the new year. And even if they don't, even if for whatever reason, things don't line up, then I still understand things that I want to do for pushing this platform forward. So I am trying to finish my work up at KHIG for custom buildings. And I'm going to get rid of these doors for now just to see what happens. Okay, that's good. I can come in here and we've got some stuff here. There may be some Z fighting that appears, but I don't know much right now. I do know this much. We've got a custom building which we're going to complete for like version 1. And I think the next things that I have to do are creating the doors again, and then basically extending the roof so we have the typical kind of like roof gutter thing. And then we'll take our time. This is a very basic, and I mean very, very basic building to start. And this is probably going to be something I do for a version 1 release on something like FlightSim.to. It's going to be a freeware. I'm probably going to be creating a more detailed version of this as a payware. but the timing and coordination with all my other projects is going to take a little bit of time as we step into the new year and I get an idea of what's going on. Suffice it to say, I am probably going to be doubling down on scenery development in the first quarter of 2025, Yahweh permitting. I'm trying to really develop something interesting with scenery dev in the coming year. And part of it is going to involve understanding how to put my resources to good use. So let's take a look at all this. And if we have to do it by hand, that's exactly what has to happen. We gotta take our time doing some stuff sometimes. All the same, I hope everybody had a very good Thanksgiving weekend, or post-Thanksgiving weekend, I should say, in the States. I got to spend time with family and enjoyed myself this weekend and did a few more things today. What's that? Okay. All right. This isn't absolutely perfect, but I'm not going to care. The biggest problem I had with all this stuff before was that I think I over-focused on getting these objects built properly. So I drained my energy and it just didn't pan out. Or uh, better said, all the focus that I put towards that kind of melted away when I noticed that certain things weren't working the way they were supposed to anyway. I'll probably be doing extremely short rapid fire streams at night this week with no audio, just to kind of share my progress on some of this stuff. I'm happy to see that these buildings are, one step closer to being done, which makes my work a little bit easier. Or significantly easier, but you get the idea. Now we've got those outer faces, and now we can actually do the work of getting everything set. So let's do that. Let me go ahead and just see how this actually looks in the sim. So my sim is full screen, but you will see the change in the upper right hand corner. And it looks like more or less what I had in my satellite imagery, which is a bigger thing. And this is good. Now I think this is just off a tad, which means we have to change the placement, which is also okay. Okay, let's move this down. And that's more or less all right. I'm really not interested in going for broke in terms of getting everything lined up absolutely perfectly. Especially not with like a Gen 1, freeware release. Okay, so great. Let me go ahead and keep going on this. And now that we have the sides walled up, I can add some materials to it. So again, the bulk of our work is going to be done in Blender because we're going to start adding some materials to this, which means we go into material mode and we actually pull up UV editing. So I'm going to have to actually click it again, but you guys get the idea. All right, so in Blender, we have the material options here, and the flat sim viewport is kind of in my way, so we're going to move this. We're going to move this window down to the bottom left. And now you're going to see what I'm doing on the right-hand side, in case you're curious. And since you're a senior developer and watching this, I'm assuming so because I have 5 recorded people in my stream deck showing me that I have 5 folks watching, so thank you. We'll talk about materials real quick. The material is the default one. I'm going to add a few, kind of like I did with the other ones already. So on the other side of this, on my computer, I'm going to grab the materials that I've used to create the effect in the other buildings and drop them in the main directory, and we're going to start referencing them now. So we're going to call this material siding, and this material is going to be used on the sides of the building and the doors. But I'm also going to create siding 2, which is going to have a different shade. However, instead of doing this right now, what I could probably do is just work on siding first and then copy it. So here's what we'll do. We're going to choose the standard FS2024 material parameters, and we're going to add some base color and some normal textures, not roughness, because we're making our own roughness channel. So first thing we're going to do is pick color for base color texture, and you're not going to see the changes immediately. I have to assign them to faces. We're going to pick normal texture, and we're going to choose a normal. Usually there's options you can choose for normals, whether you use OpenGL or DirectX. I use DirectX normal material, and I have textures available through, I think, both TextureCan, Texture Haven, as well as freepbr.com. So that's what I'm using right now. I'm also going to pay attention to my roughness factor. The metal I like to make shiny, but I don't want to make it too shiny. So let's assume that the metal is a kind of, I don't know, pinkish brown, and then we'll leave that there. We will disable backface culling because eventually we'll want to be inside of this, and I don't want to forget it. And we're going to take clear coat roughness all the way down. This technically doesn't matter, but I'm going to remove these groupings here because they're not going to apply to the object. In fact, if I leave them there, they might make this thing show up as a purple texture. So these values don't matter because we'll remove the groups, and now we can assign the siding to whatever sections I want to assign it to, which means I'm going to go ahead and pick these sides, spin around, and then once I assign them, we should be okay. Now, in theory, I might not need to assign it to every face, so I'm going to probably do this. I'm going to deselect the hangar doors that I can see opening, and now I should be able to hit the assign button, and boom, we've got a texture. Now, what I'm probably going to do is go straight to UV and do a smart UV project, let the computer figure out the way it should be placed, and then I can actually do the work of settling all this into position. The ground rule that I have for these kinds of textures is that I usually try to get 3 kind of like material lines for the corrugated metal per square. You'll see what I mean. Kind of getting fuzzy at this point, so I might have to change my viewing angle, but if we take a look at this from a slightly different angle, you can see how the metal is starting to get really, really small. Okay, so right about here is more or less the spacing that I want for this. And this is kind of like a generic lighting situation, so your mileage may vary, but essentially that's what I'm trying to achieve. And we will do the same thing up top. And again, you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna make things look a little bit different than what you might want them to be. And honestly, do not stress yourself out about that. Let my headache be your aspirin. Just do the best you can and focus on creating a finished product. Do not focus on trying to get everything perfect. Um, it's probably going to take you a lot longer than you'd like it to, or that it should, and it's probably going to make you go a little bananas. So don't do that. Now, assuming certain safe assumptions about the materials, you might be able to get your materials to behave if they're kind of shaped the same, but I can already tell that's not going to be the case here. So sometimes you have to pick the individual faces and play with them so that you can actually get this stuff done. And then position them as well, if you have to, so that it's easier for you to see whether or not their sizing is going to work. And if you get stuck and you start to feel really bad and you're like, oh, this is not going to look the best, remember, these things were made by human beings. So it's entirely possible that the construction or the finished product is not going to be a perfect installation on every wall. Like, one side could be exposed to the elements more, and the sun might warp the metal so that it looks a little bit bent or out of shape or too big or too small. I don't know how that kind of stuff, gets affected by the elements, so I'm not making any judgment call. I'm no expert, but I guess what I'm trying to say is don't sweat the placement of these things so much, and don't sweat their scale. If you find yourself in a spot where you're having difficulty figuring out whether or not these things look good, make your best guess and move on as quickly as you can. That way, you can get back to focusing on what matters, which is you just continuing to move forward. Because I don't know about anybody else, I just speak for myself. The past few years, I've had to learn a lot about understanding what's good versus what's good enough. And I think the problem is if you over focus, you're gonna wind up in a spot where you're gonna be like, I don't know what to do. And the answer is gonna be like, well, yeah, I get you, but you gotta do something. Okay, that's actually not bad. The synthetic light is playing tricks on my eyes, so I can't see them too well. But now I think I'm a bit better. And by the way, folks, sincerely, that I even have anybody watching me right now is a testament to your curiosity and your interest in the material on the channel. So thank you. Also, welcome. I do scenery development primarily for Microsoft Flight Simulator. I would like to do it for X-Plane 2 at some point. I just don't know when I'm going to invert the resources as of yet, but we might get there at some point. Also, believe me when I say I take no offense to anybody dipping out if you want to watch more more engaging content. Scenery development is something which is it's great when it's done, but it's not always easy to interpret or to watch when someone is working on it. So it would not offend me in the slightest if folks are like, yeah, this isn't working out for me, I'm out. Like, that's quite fine. And in one sense, I'm kind of documenting my journey through this too. So it's it's a personal journey for sure. Okay. Fortunately, this is getting easier and easier to do. Unfortunately, the light is hitting us at a really weird angle. But again, not that concerned about it. In a case like this, imperfection is the mother of realism. Like, I'm not talking about, grossly imperfect walls and angles and things like that, but I am talking about, you know, somebody creating something and it not looking like it, like a perfect representation of what the material should be on a wall. And the great thing about that is that essentially it wouldn't be perfect in real life either. So the kicker would be, don't spend time stressing about the placement of certain things. Hold on. There we go. That's why I couldn't see it. All right. Also, this kind of looks inverted, but at the same time, again, not going to care. Although I will care about scaling because I do want this to be properly scaled. How close am I to what these things look like? Oh, I'm pretty far off. All right, hold on. Slide them over a little bit, and we'll see whether or not they're going to work. They don't. Okay, for now, we're not going to worry about it because there's going to be doors there anyway. Especially when we get more detail put into this, it's going to be different. And now we have pretty similar spacing, and boom. Oh, I'm scaling the actual face instead of the material. All right. Just a heads up, folks, I'm probably going to be doing this only for like maybe 20 more minutes, and then we're going to wrap up for tonight. But happy to have anybody aboard that's actually watching, especially anybody that's interested in scenery development in general. It's definitely an open door in FS2024 and certainly something that can be improved upon because the base graphics in the sim have been improved upon significantly, but at the same time, the what I'm trying to say, the the airports still need some attention. Okay, so now we're going to actually pick siding 2. We're going to assign it to the other faces, and this is going to wrap up the setup. So What that means is we can take these and we can probably make them either darker or lighter. I'm probably going to make them darker. We will do a smart UV project. We will fix the faces. I might actually do them all at once because they're very similar. And what we can do at this point is scale them. And probably scale them some more. And if I take a careful look at them, these are way smaller than I want them to be. That might work. And it's possible that all of them might be set correctly. Pretty close, actually. That's not bad. I was afraid I was going to have to do a lot more adjusting than that. These doors, I think, are out of kink. But let's go ahead and adjust the... scale this down. And there we go. All right, so with the scaling adjustment mostly done, all I have to do now to finish the setup is just adjust the coloring to kind of suggest that the doors get serviced more and repainted and such. And now what I can do is go back to siding and adjust the texture color slightly by going to base color here and changing this. So you can tell there's just this very slight shade. Just slight enough so that you can actually see the difference. And then we can take this and copy it again and create a roof texture. And then we will pick the roof texture for all of these pieces. So if I pick roof and assign it, then what I can do is come in here, choose all these spaces over here, and scale them. Only problem, of course, is that these are probably going to need to be rotated 90 degrees. And there we go. I will try to scale them to suit, but it's also not going to be that big of a detail for me. This is going to be maybe a teensy bit darkened, maybe even slightly more so than the first. So I will go ahead and lower the base color maybe a little bit more to kind of say it's been baked down. And there we are. And now the very, 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 very basic interior exists. And again, this is just like a level 1 mod for a hangar building. So I can probably take very similar colors and apply them to the other building, but first thing I'm going to do is, of course, save my progress. Close that. Export. And then what's going to happen is we're going to take the same files, copy them over, and it should hot reload. And because I'm using the same textures for the other buildings as well, I should be able to render this really quickly and have the sim hot reload the changes. Um, I'm actually glad you asked me because I'm of two minds about this. If I create a floor for the hangar, and this is Z fighting that I'm eventually going to get rid of, but again, we're not focused on the interior right now. If I create a floor, what's going to happen is I'm going to need to flatten the ground to make it appropriate. And while you can, and maybe even should, apply a base flatten for the building that you're going to put down, the floor that you put down might either need to be slightly off the ground, or you're going to need to be very, 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 very precise about um, the terraforming for your custom object. So what that means is, in one sense, you're going to need to be very particular about how you floor, or yeah, how you floor, how you set this up. I'm going to use this as an example. If I do terraforming, for some strange reason this does not work, then we do 1, 0, 20. There's something about that isn't working for me, and I'm not sure why. So I'm going to have to take a look at this eventually better overall, but I don't know if there's a way for me to use terraforming and actually adjust, make this better. Let's see. In short, putting floors in on buildings correctly may actually require some work. So in one sense, it may be in your best interest not to freak out about such things as those. Maybe. Yeah. I'm going to be looking into aprons and polygons, mostly aprons for ground textures. So let me get rid of this terraforming and add one more dimension to this object. I'm going to probably lower the floor, and then that might actually help me to create a more compelling effect. Actually, before I even do that, let me take the fake plane inside the hangar and see how far off the ground I'm going to be when I do the things. Alright, so let's stick this in here. Still plenty of room on either side. In fact, let's just fix this up. And let's see. The ground gear actually goes under the base layer, so this is a problem. If I'm going to try to flatten the terrain, I need to either make the ground projected mesh or get rid of the ground altogether. But again, this is, oh yeah, editing and previewing live. Blender and the Microsoft FS2024 exporter and the SDK, they work so much more nicely now than they did with FS2020. I mean, I, I'm really enjoying the process now that I understand how it works. But yeah, for flooring, I'm probably going to take the floors out of the buildings when I actually start making interiors. So I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to ignore this for now and probably lower it a touch, which means I'm going to extrude the base slightly, just a little bit. And then what should probably happen should be, after of course I save this as a new version, that I should be able to see the changes immediately, and the building itself might even resettle. So give me a moment. This is actually starting to get interesting now. So paste, and we'll see what happens now. This is not reloading. And kaboom. Okay, so close enough that I actually like the finished product. And yes, it is below the terrain. Yeah, I'm probably either going to be working with aprons or projected mesh, but projected mesh with the terrain following, if you will, is probably going to be not too dissimilar in effect. However, this does make me think about the way these hangar buildings are going to look and behave. So this is actually a pretty good thing to consider. All right. Setting up the fifth building is probably going to be extremely similar to how we set up the sixth one. So give me a moment. This is going to take considerably less time. Because repetition. So we're going to close these doors up, and we're going to paint them and stick them back in the sim. And because we haven't put any material textures on this as far as I know, extending the roof should not be a problem. Okay, great. And we're going to grab all these roof pieces, sandwiched in the middle, akin to the filling in an Oreo cookie, and we're going to stretch it out. Okay, temporary foodie chat. Do you guys like regular Oreo cookies, or do you like mega stuff or double stuff? I'm okay with like regular cookies. I think the furthest I'll go is I'll eat like a double stuff Oreo, because I think once you start getting to like mega stuff, you start dealing with so much of the filling in the middle. It definitely changes the flavor profile of the thing. Regular Oreo. There we go. Nice. Nom nom nom. Oh man. I'm not gonna lie, getting together people for additional opportunities to consume good food like that, that might not be a bad thing. Okay. So again, we're gonna create the materials and we're going to have a good time. Siding, of course. And then we're basically going to base the other ones off of that siding. But to do that, we do need to have the textures, which we're going to use. Fortunately, with all of these, there are only 2 textures that I've been working with. I had a roughness map, but for some reason the roughness map was not behaving nicely. And I basically figured out that not having it there and tweaking the values by hand is a lot easier for me anyway. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And this will be my last edits for tonight, and then I will back up the project and keep in touch with you on Discord. But let's go ahead and finish what we started. Siding is going to take an FS2024 standard texture. We're going to apply the color and normal textures that we had before. And again, I believe this was from texturehaven.com. Let me open up a folder and confirm that for you. I categorized where the textures came from. So model textures, no, texture can, probably texturecan.com. All right, good enough. And we will assign it, remove backface culling, remove the clear coat roughness, remove the roughness and metallic groups, and we will assign those by hand. Oh, there was one thing I forgot to do, which I'm going to do with the 6th building. I forgot to make the roof texture rougher. So I'm going to jump back to building 6 temporarily, and we're going to fix that real fast. Easier for me to not forget that, to do that now instead of later. So it's hard to tell in this view, but the roughness for the roof texture needs to be a little bit stronger because it's probably been baked more by the elements. So by doing that and by exporting the file, then what we can do is dump that into the scene. And again, one hot reload should be all it takes to see the update. So it's not focused on the screen, but you're going to see it when I turn the camera. Okay. And now it's more matted than it was before. And the sides are still, somewhat metallic, like shiny. It's kind of hard to tell, but not at the same time. And we're gonna make this a very similar color, very, 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 very similar color. And we'll get to work. All right, let's go back to the fifth building. Racing the clock here. Let's go. All right. So back to 5, and I'm gonna assign the. Oh, wait a minute. Was this material? No, this is siding. Did I not adjust that? That's interesting. Okay. Roughness factor 0.5. No backface culling. No clear coat roughness. Get rid of this. Get rid of this. Come on. And that should be it. When we assign it, we wrap up. We go to UV editing. Slide this over because I'm working in 1080p. You might not have as much difficulty with your screen real estate, but I like to keep things running at a good clip. Change this and go to UV editing. Smart UV project because I'm lazy. And here we go. We'll do this in chunks. Fortunately, the lighting makes it much easier for me to do these kinds of changes from a distance. And yeah, we're pretty close. Again, I'm not going for perfection. It's not going to happen. I'm going for the effect. This was going to make me work a little bit for it. That's fine. That's fine. And then we take this and we slide it around. And boom, there we go. Now, because these two are the same size, it might be easier for me to adjust them both at once, but we'll see. I gotta get close. And that could do it. That's not bad. That's not bad. How about you? Good. You'll work. You'll work. Did you not double checking? Sometimes speed matters. Remember, you might get to a point someday where you get even more successful than I do, and I wish you nothing but the best in terms of success if you're watching this and you want to do scenery dev for a living. But at the same time, you want to make sure you don't over focus on stuff. Take it from somebody that's done it way too much. You want to give your brain plenty of breathing room when you're doing stuff like this because you're gonna be yeah, when you're starting out or when you're doing a very low level test, measure once and cut twice. Like let the model speak for you. The reason why I'm kind of doing blitz development is because this gives me so much bigger of a dopamine hit in terms of understanding how the textures lay out as opposed to trying to be, quote unquote, correct and make sure the textures are like perfect, which might actually work for some designs, especially if you're doing an intricate logo in front of an airport terminal, for example. But I'm not. So I can take a different approach to this. And in fact, if I can save myself the aggravation of having to be absolutely precise about something, then I'm gonna do it. Yeah, the alternate voice. Like, oh, DJ's not doing a good job. Just be quiet, opposite voice. Um, you struggle with that. If you're a content developer of any sort of capacity, you struggle going against yourself and being like, no, 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 this is good enough. We're gonna roll with it. It's like, but no, like, I want this to be absolutely perfect. It's like, no, no, slow down. It's taken me years to realize this. You're gonna mess up, and the things you create at first, you're not gonna like. You're gonna be like, oh, this sucks. I could have done such a better job. It's like, no, 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 no. Give yourself room. Give yourself room, please. You'll be so much better off for that. All right, so let me do this. Let me save these changes and hopefully not lose my edits. I don't think I should. I just want to go back to building 6 because I want to get the color for the siding. I want to make the siding pretty similar on both of these. So this is siding 2? No, this is siding. I want to get the hex code for the color because I'm going to basically copy and paste it. And then when I do that, I'm going to be able to go back to this. And then we're going to take this, we're going to actually apply the change here. And blammo. Now we've got 2 very similar hangers. And they look a little bit glossy, but it's okay. Again, this has got to be non backface culling, and roughness factor is set. And now we're going to make a copy of this, and we're going to create something called siding 2, which is slightly brighter because reasons. But we're going to use siding for these, and we're going to use siding 2 for these faces. Because DIGI design. Your design, your rules. My design, my rules. Haha. Okay, what I can do is this. Pick siding 2 and then mess with the color. Same thing, gotta be careful. I don't know why it makes me reselect all this, but whatever. Alright, backface culling, roughness factor 0.5, good, good, good. And give me a base color for you. Okay, assign. Before I do anything, let's go ahead and change the base color, make it a little bit brighter. And is the base color different slightly? I can't tell. Oh, I'm a big fan of open hangers. I am ultra lazy, so you're gonna find me waffling back and forth often on the layout of hangars for airports. But I think if you can, and you want to add that extra level of detail, I say go for it because it's going to give people the chance to potentially park in hangars, especially in the elements. What you're going to find is when I'm working on either the more detailed versions of these, we're going to go into this thing called environmental occlusion so that you can actually park in a hangar and not still get rained on. I did that with the hangars and the buildings that I put in some of my sceneries. So it's going to be an ongoing conversation, but essentially, yeah, you're going to see me talk about this thing, which essentially is basically the equivalent of flight sim Jello, and it's going to make. Why is this not going smaller? I'm a little bit confused. Hold on. There we go. The environmental occlusion prevents you from parking somewhere and it's still it's still snowing inside the hangar. So it's something that you're going to want to do if you're actually going to use the interior of your building. For a version 1.0 render, this is not going to have an interior other than what the textures currently do. So in other words, it's not going to be a major problem. I don't care if the inside of my textures get snowed on. It's just how it is. When I start adding the interiors, though, that is going to change. Oh, that's why. Huh. Oh. Okay. The texture difference is significant. We need to fix that. Hot take. If you can do it, do it. The flight sim enthusiast will thank you for it profusely. Profusely. Let's see. Save this. I'm kind of concerned about how the whatchamacallit, the textures, not the textures, but the parameters keep resetting on me, but that's just me. All right, let's see. I want the doors to be slightly brighter than these guys. But let me take a look at the difference between that and that. Is that actually brighter than this? All right, hold on. Look at that, and then look at this. This should be brighter. This should be darker. All right, hold on. I'm going to switch back to building 6 for a moment. Okay, so let's see. You're there, and you are there. Yes, so basically it's maxed out. All right, go back to 5. Nope, don't save. And let's take a look. Why do you keep reverting to... you are asking for it. Knucklehead scenery issue. No, no backface culling. Okay, so I can tell that the doors are different. The question is, are the doors similar? I kind of don't think it matters, but we'll see. Let's duplicate this some more. Make this roof. And then switch it back. Switch back siding. And then add new material. Call that one roof. Assign it to the roof textures up top. Rotate these textures by 90 degrees. And again, drop them in. And fix them. Scale. All right. Close enough. All right. Now, what I can do is change the texture presentation. Why, oh why do you keep making me remove roughness? Maps. I have no idea. Oh, because you have them. Ha ha ha. Small wonder I was driving myself bananas. Okay. All right, now for roof, this needs to be significantly darker. I'm just going to go ahead and give it a slightly different shade of bake. And that should probably do it. Okay, so now we've got the building where we want it to be. We can export the thing. And that should be it. Let's go back to building 5, pick the things. And this could actually take care of us. Team Miller 51, welcome aboard, my friend. Very happy to have you. You joined me on the tail end of a scenery dev stream. Very happy to have you aboard as we do some scenery dev stuff at Higginsville Industrial Municipal Airport. I have been working on this airport for several days now, but I have been working on making it look good and certainly presenting something for the people to play with. Are the buildings a little smaller than I'd like them to be? Yes. Do I care? Nuh-uh. I care enough to possibly tweak these values a bit, but I can either scale the buildings or leave them exactly the way they are because number one, that's satellite flattened imagery, and number two, I might not care. I might not care. It's like, oh, are you sure, DIGI? It's okay. It's okay. Again, we're not going for perfection. If we were going for perfection, we would be making a payware release. Oh, dude, I'm so happy that the feedback loop for adding objects and tweaking them in the sim and using Blender, I'm so happy this is so much faster now. Like this is like one of my early Christmas presents. So, um, yeah, there we go. I released Higginsville Industrial Municipal Airport back in the summer of 2022, but I did not add a single custom building to it. Now, all the buildings are custom, and this is what I want the first level of detail to be. As I add more layers to these buildings and potentially even give them interiors, depending, I will probably add levels of detail for the sim to actually render them at certain ranges. But I'm very happy with this. In terms of progress for tonight, I'm good. I'm going to go ahead and hit the save button. And let's see, what am I missing here? Oh, no, not much. That's my exclusion group. Custom buildings are here. I've got them all here, except for you, which I'm going to move you in. Grouping your objects is fantastic. It's important. And we have static aircraft as well. My take on static aircraft are okay as long as there aren't too many at an airport. Some people like a whole bunch of static aircraft. That's up to you. If you're making the scenery, it is your call. And you don't have to listen to anybody, not even me. Do whatever you want with scenery development. Go nuts. This is just how I do it. So we've got this set. Static aircraft is set. The airport is set. I do have a runway and I do have a two start positions, but I need to actually, add the ramp back in, add the parking back in, maybe even create a custom beacon, which is smaller, maybe some antenna for the buildings and such. But again, for a freeware release, getting some custom buildings with a nominal level of detail is probably going to be great. We're living in the future. That's right. Okay, so we got this saved. Let's save it again. And we're going to hit build all. And now, after hitting build all, we should be back to edited on this indicator. There we go. All right, so we've got the buildings in place now. We've got what's probably going to be a bit of an office, which I'll probably try to add some signs to. We've got a bigger hangar here, probably for servicing things like business jets and such. And then we've got the small little hangars, which are going to store, tiny Robin R, Piper Cub planes. A building which is Higginsville Avionics, probably enough room for one or two planes and some office buildings. I'm sorry, office rooms. And then these buildings here, flying cars any day now. We might not be that far away now. That's for sure. Okay. I'm pretty happy with the progress. I think if I can get the base textures down and I can build some solid fencing and add some vehicles and clean this up, I think I might see a scenery release on FlightSim.to or somewhere this week, depending. And then we can continue adding to it, and I can probably work on my first payware release. I think you're done. Push it live. Well, okay. First thing I want to do, I want to work on these textures. I want to actually put aprons down, taxi lines, and such. Then I'm going to add some very basic lighting for the freeware release so you can possibly see where you're going at night. I'm not going to go nuts with the lighting. It's just going to be very basic, maybe one or two lamps, 3 or 4 at the most, where the cars are parked, and maybe 1 or 2 by the hangars. And then once the lighting is done, we're going to add more start positions here. We're going to add a fueling station where this cylinder is going to be. And then we will jazz it up a little bit and then push it. I'm hoping for a release on Friday. I'm hoping. I don't know, but we'll see. If nobody cares about the beacon, once everything else is done, we can go live. I might make redoing the beacon part of the payware version, but we'll see what happens. I'm going to make a backup copy of this. I'm going to keep grinding on it this week. I'm probably not going to do anything more tonight. I've got some dinner to start working on and a great, hopefully great upcoming week of work. Folks, um, I don't feel weird about this anymore. Just asking for some support if you're able to, if you'd like to. I never want to push that on anybody, but I do like telling folks if you're interested in supporting the mission of the DIGI Scenery Studio, I'm going to go ahead and give you links to my Ko-fi or my Buy Me a Coffee account if you want to support. I am probably going to try to use as many custom models as I can. I probably will use one or two vanilla models still for freeware development. And these are basically low level models. I want to do more things. I want to add more individual identifiable features to these. I might even render some of these with open hangars so that you can actually drive a vehicle into them, stuff like that. I might even make them interactive, but that takes time, and that means some some support would be appreciated. But again, you guys being here and cheering me on, that's great. If you're able to, I'm going to make it worth your while. I'm thinking about using my Ko-fi and Buy Me a Coffee account to start setting up support and membership tiers with benefits, potential swag, some designs as we move forward into more and more scenery dev, obvious discounts on my products, and maybe even free things. T. Miller, I have actually sincerely thought about doing a YouTube channel, and I think I might get that set up either this month or in January, Yahweh permitting, so that I can actually get long form videos set up and so I can actually step people through the process of creating an airport from scratch. This airport's still a teensy bit too big to do a extremely small series of videos. So I'm probably going to pick an even smaller airport somewhere, even if it's like a dirt strip or a grass strip, just to do things like creating the project, setting up the runway, building a taxiway, getting the basics of connecting the taxiway to the runway, getting all that stuff set up, setting up the start positions, adding objects, adding custom objects, stuff like that. um, Actually, Tabletop Android, you might be surprised. There are two folks that trained me that might actually still be doing things uh, in that space. I'll give you their YouTube channels if you want to check out their stuff. They have gone to great lengths to actually explain the way certain things work. So, the first one is going to be the first one that I actually learned from. This is going to be a channel called My Physical World, and I'm not sure if they're doing it anymore, but I'm going to give you them, and that's My Physical World. And then the other channel is somebody that goes by the name of Federico Pinotti, who is somebody that's actively working on scenery development video content. But I think in terms of creating new content that's actually for FS2024, you guys are right. Maybe it's entirely possible that I need to kind of jump into that space and offer more support to folks that are interested in doing it themselves. The process is very similar, but hey, if anybody wants to see the stuff that I'm doing with like Blender and actually tying it together with creating content for FS 2024, this is a great time to jump into the space. So stay tuned. I will continue to actually expand on this and push forward. Again, really appreciate your support here through follows, subscriptions, cheers, donations. I have my Ko-fi and buymeacoffee.com accounts, and I have a reference to my Buy Me a Coffee account on my channel uh, About section if you're interested. I will be continuing with some low-level dev, off mic, off audio. If you see me deving, it's because my office hours are open, and essentially, yeah, that's what I'm going to be up to. But folks, thank you so much for tuning in today. It's been a pleasure chatting with you guys and keeping you in the loop on the setup process to create my very first scenery for FS 2024. Again, With the level of detail that we put into this and the expectation of creating something for release in the very near future, I'm expecting, or excuse me, not expecting, hoping for release this Friday. We'll see. And then we'll see what happens. But I'm going to go ahead and head out for tonight. And I really appreciate everybody stopping by. Stay tuned to my channel, and of course, stay tuned to my Discord if you are on there for updates and the like. I'm going to try to stream a little bit every night, sometime around maybe like 9 p.m. Eastern, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. And it's only going to be like a half an hour to an hour or so, and me kind of jumping in and out just to do dev and keep you guys informed. No audio though, unless the stream title actually says or doesn't include a no audio tag. So, friends, thank you very much for stopping by today. And like I always like to say at the end of every stream, if you don't have peace, you want the Prince of Peace, and that is Jesus Christ. Merry Christmas to you, my friends. Have a great evening, and stay tuned. Till next time.